Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Good evening. We're here at Talk Cosmos, and we're in the archetype of Virgo. Tonight, Sue Rose Minahan is on the road and doing Mars. So Sarah Stromley and myself, Elizabeth Liz Machette, will be doing the full and new moons for this month. And we have the full moon of Pisces. It was on Monday at September 1st for the Pacific Northwest at 10:22 p.m. And for the East Coast, Eastern Standard Time was 1:22 a.m. on September 2nd. So we're having some very interesting times here. And I'd like to welcome the Moonbeam team.
Relating to the sun and moon's energies, including the planets and the entire cosmos for the month's systematic 2-week intervals of the new moon and full moon, plus the annual 4 to 5 eclipses, this is your Moonbeam team.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, host of Talk Cosmos, an evolutionary astrologer and consultant, plus a certified color energy coach. I explore creative expression as an artist, a musician, and write abundantly, stories to poetry. I love investigating mythology's language, philosophizing eternity, and I'm a perpetual student of life, seeing oneness of body, spirit of people, animals, and nature.
I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, certified astrologer, sacred healing counselor, tarotist, and numerologist, providing individual consultations, teaching and tutoring internationally, co-author of Gateways to Change, Keys to Navigating the Seas of Life, currently facilitating workshops in Marysville and Camino Island, Washington.
And I'm Sarah Stromley, a craniosacral therapist and founder of Brain Body Therapy in Kirkland, Washington. I'm an evolutionary astrologer that incorporates different forms of horary, location mapping, and medical astrology into my practice. I enjoy uncovering flower and mineral frequencies that also support the mind-body coherence that aid in the healing journey.
And as Albert Einstein said, energy is never destroyed. Energy only changes.
Well, welcome tonight. We're talking about the archetype of Virgo. Earlier this week, we had a full moon on the 1st. So I'd like to welcome Sarah Stromley. And again, I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, stepping in for Sue as she's on the road tonight. So how you doing, Sue? Or Sarah?
Yeah, hi. I'm doing great. Thank you.
So have you been able to see the moon in the sky? It's been really pretty at night.
Oh, it's been beautiful. It just, it looks magical. Now that some of the emotional edges kind of peeled back on some of that intensity of that full moon. I like how Sue mentioned that there's just so much of this Pisces confusion and all this hot Mars energy right now. So it just seems like also with Venus and Cancer, conjunct the asteroid Hygeia, which rules hygiene, has been in this tight square right now with Mars and Eris in Aries this week, making it just a bit disorienting and frustrating themes of how do we safely go back to what we know we can do. And I've just been reading some crazy new stats on the spread of CV transmission rates that are like wildfire in these areas where colleges and schools have reopened and without enough social distancing and safety measures. So, I just find it all very interesting.
That speaks of this cardinal energy of this Grand Cross. It's cardinal energy is about initiating things. And I know we have wildfires, burning in California and Colorado pretty rampantly, but I know that there's fires burning other places also. So, that kind of goes along with this energy of this initiation and with this cardinal
Record
Grand
heat.
Cross, it's
record heat. Yeah.
yeah, record heat again. And it's like being pulled in four different directions. And, you know, the cardinal energy wants you to initiate and start something new, but it's like being pulled in one direction and thinking, oh, I want to move that way. And then it's like, wait a minute, I have something over here I need to do. And then like kind of being pulled away from that direction to the other. So it's almost like being pulled in all these directions. It's difficult to move in any one specific direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And with hurricanes like blasting the East Coast and, you know, the southern United States, it's, I mean, not to sound apocalyptic, I mean, always there's themes. After the fire comes fertile new forest. And after it all blows over, we come together in reverence for the power of nature and the clear considerations of what is most important.
Exactly. And, you know, with this square or T-square cardinal energy, it's like, you know, sometimes it's good to pause and stop. It's like not to just rush in to make changes and to, you know, maybe collect some more information or evaluate a little bit more. But it is, you know, asking us at some point that we need to make a change. You talked about the Pisces energy, and we have the moon in Pisces and Neptune is in Pisces, and the asteroid Ceres is in Pisces also. So yes, there's, you know, that energy there, but the moon is making a nice aspect with the planet Uranus of sudden changes, and also to the sun in Virgo. So we have some nice helpful aspects there. But Mars is going to go turn retrograde next week on Wednesday, the 9th. So,
it's, you know, really slow right now. Like, yeah. Like, Mars doesn't like things slow. It's especially in Aries. It's all impatient. So I want it now. I want it yesterday.
Right. It's like, let's just go bungee jumping and we'll deal with it later.
Oh, yes.
It's like, you know, maybe that bungee jumping right now is not the best idea. It's like maybe, you know, take in some information. You know, yes, I think we're feeling it's like we want to make changes, but I think there's, you know, getting more information, collecting some more data are required at this time. And that would be the planet Mercury, which is in Virgo also. So, you know, it feels like that we might not have all the details.
Yes.
So, yes. But it's, you know, very interesting times. So this is super exciting, the astrology of everything, and, you know, things are moving forward, and, you know, people are making changes. Some people know exactly what they want to do. So for some, this might not be being pulled in four directions. It might be, this is the time that they've been thinking about some things and they're taking action and putting those into place. Several of my clients are moving, you know, they're in the process of packing up. They've already moved. Some are, you know, selling their houses. I mean, it's like really interesting energy of how people are just like, okay, this is what the change I want to make.
Yeah, more than usual.
It seems like it to me, for sure.
Well, water and heat make steam, right? And that,
yes.
That can be quite an engine to move things. So.
Right. And it's like, you know, since the beginning of this year started, it's like there's just been so many changes that we're all going through and living through. It's like, you know, does this work for me now? Is my job even there? Or do I need to, you know, maybe it's time to just like, okay, I've been laid off. It's time to do something else that I've always wanted to. I might as well try it. Or I want to be closer to my family. I want to be farther away from my family, maybe get a new job. I mean, there's just all kinds of interesting things that are taking place. So
exactly, yeah.
You know, to put us where we want to be. So, and in that square, you know, it's really interesting because it's we have Venus, and across from Saturn and Pluto, even though they're kind of moving apart from that. And then the asteroid Juno, who, people that we want to partner with, or groups that we want to partner with, or things that we want to do. And then Mars is there too. So Saturn is like, well, let's, hold the brakes, let's stop. And Mars is like, let's get going.
Yeah.
And then Venus is like, do I really like this? So, I hear of a lot of people, sorting through things in their house that maybe they no longer want, or cleaning out that garage that they finally, they're finally ready to let go. So it's like, really interesting, all this energy going on.
Yeah. And, Pisces is very sensitive to things. So, with that spirit and matter dichotomy, that tension between Virgo and Pisces that's happening, and the moon being so close to, in proximity to Neptune, which can really dissipate what seems real. And the fact that it's sextile Uranus very tightly and applying, it just seems like maybe a good cry might be necessary, like, okay, let's just get it out, get it over with, and move forward. So let's continue.
And even though the Neptune isn't, like really close to the moon or totally opposite the sun, it's still playing in there, the Neptune and Pisces opposite Mercury in Virgo. So it's like, I would think that people are like having desires or dreams or imagining what they want their tomorrows to be like.
Yeah.
And, some people have, are ready to act on it and some aren't. So, but I think people are starting to get little hints of what they want, like some people live by themselves, and it's like, well, since we've had, stay-at-home orders, even though they've been lifted somewhat, it's like maybe they don't want to live by themselves anymore. So they want to maybe have a roommate, or, their house is way too big and they don't want to clean that anymore. Or, there's just all kinds of change in what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. And what one can work within the limitations of the new paradigm. And
I know here in the greater Seattle area, real estate's just going like crazy. There's low inventory. I heard from one realtor that, pretty much 5 days on the market and it's under contract. I've seen a few places, sell for $20,000 to $50,000 more than they were even listed for. So it seems interesting that change is taking place if, people don't have jobs. But then if you're working from home and you have children that need to do school from home, your housing needs may be a little different now.
Yeah. And, maybe certain couples or relationships may have reached their threshold, especially if they've been in confined circumstances like they have. So going bigger or going smaller, scaling to fit, and within whatever budget or means and needs seem appropriate.
Exactly.
Or kind of at play.
Well, and this chart here in the Seattle area has a Taurus rising. So that would mean the planet Venus is the ruler of that. So, and Venus is in Cancer. So, do we feel our needs are being met? Are we being nurtured? Do we feel comfortable? That can be, with the food we're eating. Maybe, we've been eating too much macaroni and cheese past 5 months. And it's like maybe, a little more exercise and some vegetables and fruits, or it can be different things for different people. So, it's really we're in super interesting times. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's so amazing.
Yeah. And Venus in this chart that I'm looking at for that full moon is in the third house. So that can be neighbors,
Yes.
neighbors and siblings, like,
Mm-hmm.
Family or neighbor concerns that may help make this easier. So, or more challenging.
Well, it's also communicating with people. So, people that perhaps, have been home more and don't normally use Zoom. I understand a lot of people are learning to use Zoom, and there's like some really interesting programs happening that they'll say, well, let's have a picnic for this holiday weekend on Zoom, or let's have tea together or dessert, or just some really interesting things. And they'll pick a topic, and a lot of people that I know that weren't using it before are like have 3 or 4 that they can pick from every day if they so desire to get on, and that's been helpful for them. So it's really interesting how that all comes about, and that'll be more part of the future of how we communicate. I mean, a lot of us have been on social networking sites, and so a lot of us are used to it, but some of the my elderly friends that I know that just don't get on and do those kind of things are doing more of that now too.
Yeah.
So
it's great that we have these tools. Yeah, it's great that we have these tools that are get easier to connect.
Absolutely. So did you have some flower essences for us tonight?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. I was pondering, like how does one keep a kid on a computer for 6 to 8 hours a day? Especially when there's all these buffering and connection issues, or like no physical stimulation, no exercise or sense of companionship or camaraderie. That was something I was doing shortly before I started looking at my inventory, and what popped was iceberg rose. And what this beautiful white rose is saying is, I can help with restoring clarity and make math, computer, and science work more interesting. So this flower essence seems to target the etheric and mental and spiritual energy bodies and the left brain. So it seems to help both adults and especially children that are sensitive and feel fragile and from a lack of emotional connection. So, and with all this opposition and split with Piscean spiritual need to connect and recover from where it's been injured, and Virgo's logical processing that can spin out into analysis paralysis, I believe this plant medicine seeks to help ground and support the integration of abstract concepts that in more useful and more interesting ways.
Nice. That sounds really great.
Thank you.
I know my grandkids, they're having issues because the teacher will send the Zoom link and it says, well, we're going to start class at 7:30. And so they'll sit there waiting for the teacher, and the teacher doesn't get on till 9. And the class is supposed to be like 50 minutes. And the teacher will say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having so many technical difficulties after 10 minutes, and say, okay, we're done.
This has been, I really part of this conundrum, and I think I see it at play, especially through this time, and these signatures of Mercury rules Virgo, and it's what rules the internet.
Yes.
Unless that's, I think it's what rules the internet. I'm pretty certain, because it's the communication god. So, and streaming, education, all that. There was an alarming report from a government whistleblower that there's an estimated 49%. That's an estimated 162 million Americans that are either currently without broadband internet or only have dial-up slash DSL, which is simply just too slow to matter. It's just not functional for the type of streaming that's required. So it's both a cost issue, it seems, and an infrastructure issue. And there's just these dynamics that are, I'm hopefully, is getting worked out and ironed out between this trine energy of Virgo to this Capricorn, Saturn structure, form and structure, and all that. So I'm hoping that gets ironed out. But the core issues seem to be going beyond just living in rural areas. It's being debilitated even between these loosely defined zoning blocks that they work from and these regulations that severely limit which companies are allowed to even lay wire, that limit competition,
Yes.
and any need for doing it better than they've been, and our government being unwilling to determine and define that the internet is a basic utility like water or sewage or electricity, so they can enforce it as such. So as this goes on, this digital divide between the haves and the have-nots, the who can access for work and who gets education, that divide is continuing to grow, which is very serious.
Well, and I saw the article about the two little girls that went down to, I believe it was a Taco Bell, and sat outside so that their little device could hook up to internet so they could do their schoolwork. And people found out about it, and they raised an incredible amount of money to help those little girls get internet service and help them with other things that they might have needed. It was really, a heartwarming story that people reached out and assisted them to get them the things that the basic needs that they needed. So, that's one thing of, was one example of the Venus in Cancer of, what are our needs? I mean, what do we really need?
Yeah.
Our basic needs is food, shelter, and, probably some transportation, because we do need to get around a little bit, but, we have to have food and water and shelter of some kind. And, we mentioned hurricanes earlier. When Hurricane Laura went in on the Texas-Louisiana border, I hear that there's a lot of places without electricity and water. Well, you can live without electricity, but you cannot live without clean water to drink.
Yeah.
So that'll be really interesting. And they said it would be, many weeks. Now, I don't know, maybe they'll get the water restored, much faster than the electricity. But, it's those kind of things. And then there was a storm on the East Coast, and, you'd see the transformers blowing. And it's they didn't turn the power off. That's really interesting, because I lived in Puerto Rico for a number of years. And whenever a hurricane would come, they'll tell you what time they're going to turn the power off. And then when the storm passes, and they turn it back on. And then you don't have fires and people being electrocuted. So it was interesting that it's well, they wouldn't have that, the tree falling down and breaking the power pole and the transformer exploding and catching a house on fire and all those things if they did that. Now, I know another thing is people sometimes are on oxygen or a feeding tube or something that they need electricity. But if you kind of know ahead of time, you can have, some battery backup power, or you could have a generator. Or I know in the area I live out here on Camino Island that, sometimes it snows and you get snowed in and the power will go out, and you just have to let the fire department know that, if you're on something that, say oxygen, for example, it's that you'll run out, you have this much supply, they'll bring you supplies when you're in need during the storm.
Right.
But I don't know how that works in other areas. So
I've heard that of some areas with this internet issue, they've been utilizing school buses that are out of commission right now because there's, some locations aren't taking kids to schools. But they're moving them to areas that are very deficient in those certain broadband blocks that don't have access. So they create a Wi-Fi hotspot that allows them to get the access they need. So.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break here for a moment or two, and you've been listening to Talk Cosmos, and we're talking about Virgo.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Virgo. By leaving a cycle based on the creative manifested legacy of our highest creative form, the energy of Virgo completes the last sign below the horizon of the self and requires discernment to perfect oneself through the mental process of critical analysis. As a mutable earth sign duly ruled by Mercury, Virgo refines, heals, or fixes through daily routines, developing skills and services to control nature's chaos and maximize efficiency.
Welcome. This is Amanda Pierce, astrologer and paradigm shifter, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we understand how to implement our free will through the cosmos.
Alternative Talk 1150.
Well, welcome back to Talk Cosmos. The Moonbeam team is here tonight talking about the Virgo archetype. Sue Rose Minahan is on the road doing Mars energy. And we have Sarah Stromley and myself, Elizabeth Liz Machette, here tonight with you. And you can listen on Thursday morning to the repeat of this show at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And we've been talking about the full moon that we had on September 1st. At 10:22 p.m. at Pacific Daylight Time and 1:22 a.m. on September 2nd Eastern Standard Time. So, Sarah, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to talk about the full moon?
No, I think we can move to the upcoming moon because that might be more interesting to look at.
Well, and kind of a recap if you're just tuning in, it's we had the full moon in Virgo Pisces, the moon in Pisces. So, getting lots of ideas and maybe not sure which direction to go, being kind of pulled in different directions. Some people already know which direction to go, but some of us aren't quite sure. So now we're going to move on to the new moon on September 17th at 4 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the moon and the sun will be at 25 degrees Virgo. So it's always the new moon is a time to start new projects, do your wishes, write down your desires, start something new. So we'll kind of look at that chart. And did you have any more homeopathics or flower essences to talk about?
I do. I can talk about that now. Another one that was pulling for me was white pine, and it's been heavily used as a remedy by American Indians and early settlers and professional doctors in North America. Both the bark and the needles have been used for a number of things, but the thing I found it interesting why this was pulling is it helps with, on a physical level, I mean, if you're taking it as an herb, it can help with tendencies of poor oxygenation and tissue depression, and it wakes up it brings more oxygen, and it works as both a relaxant and a stimulant, and it's used in respiratory infections. frequently. So, and it helps infection kind of deep down in the lungs and in the sinuses. So if you have chronic sinus infections, it's great. It's a powerful antioxidant, and it helps the body absorb more vitamin C and other antioxidants that you're taking. But if you have pulmonary issues, just it works great for that. For cold, flu, and it helps things from going deeper. And it also helps with the digestive tract, which is ruled by Virgo. And it helps the skin as an antiseptic in that way as well. And but as a flower essence, it helps on an energetic level with depression and treating issues of calming the nerves, and it allows for more introspection versus like having the mind spin out as much, and it helps with any guilt or self-blame on things, going to the wrongness of oneself. And I really liked how this was described when you're tired from doing nothing and need exercise and inspiration. So that seems to kind of fit with our COVID dilemma right now. So, but yeah, it seems to work on the 6th and 12th chakras, and it helps expand one's awareness into just how each of us fit into, how the individual fits into a greater part of humanity, and the intuitiveness that can help make the remote situations that seem to be present more easier.
Well, that sounds like a good one to use. So that'll help with the moons and just our times that we're in, it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to remind you that Mars, the planet of action, is going to go retrograde on Wednesday the 9th, and it goes retrograde about every 2 years. And then Jupiter will station direct on Saturday the 12th. So when planets are getting ready to move directions or change in speed, it's, there's kind of like a lot of extra energy there. It's like, if you had a big cruise ship and you want to slow it down, you can put take the engine, instead of full speed ahead, put it in neutral, but then you can put it in reverse mode too. And so like a lot of action around the water is churning to slow the cruise ship down, because it's not like you just don't give it any juice and it just like stops like a car would stop, but takes a while for it to stop. So it's like a lot of energy is happening around that time. So this new moon, looking at the new moon chart, we have a Leo rising, which is ruled by the sun. So that's, seeing where the energy is of, who we want to be. And then the new moon is in the 2nd house of our values at 25 of Virgo. So there's interesting aspects happening there. We still have a cardinal cross happening here. Or no, it's not a cardinal. This one's a mutable cross. And so, the sun and moon are square to the nodes of the moon. So our destiny and where we've come from, and opposite Neptune. So, it's like shifting it a little bit. It's like, I would say by the new moon, we'll have more information of what's happening right now or what's happened in the past several weeks. So
it's more personal.
Yes.
It's definitely more personal. And with that trine, going, for the Pacific Northwest here, those that are experiencing this new moon, and in this location. It's in the second house of values and self-worth, I would say, with it's in a trine aspect to that Saturn, Pluto. So questions of in the sixth house of service. So like, how can I be more valued for my service, and really creating some dialogue around that.
Exactly. And am I in the right job? Do I need training? Is it time to retire early if you can retire? Because several of my friends have retired early, but they could have retired a few years ago, but they were kind of just like they were enjoying working, so they kept going. And so it's like making these adjustments. It's a good thing, I think.
And the sixth house also rules health.
Yes.
And so this could be supportive of doing things for your health. And I always love harnessing Virgo, Capricorn moons for integrating, like changing a habit or something that's very difficult or overwhelming for me to do, really harnessing the willpower and focus to get it done. Like eating, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, so this could, this could be supporting doing a cleanse physically or metaphorically. This could be supportive of learning a very difficult topic or subject that's been very challenging and kind of overwhelming for you. It could be tackling a project like cleaning out a room or a storage space or something that's been weighing on you. So anything that's going to help your physicality, and I think is a supportive of your intestinal, sending love to your intestinal tract or your powers of assimilation. I think those are really powerful goals to kind of incorporate at that time and to really take action on them in a plan.
Well, and speaking of a health aspect, it can be very simple. Just drink an extra glass of water a day, or
yes,
get out in the sunshine for 15 minutes. Go weed a flower bed. It can be it doesn't have to be a big, huge project.
It could start an exercise program too, or something that's maybe intimidating to just put those sneakers on and get out the door or whatever it takes, So.
Right. Because if you start a running program, it's not like the first day you run 5 miles and you're all ready to go for a marathon. It takes time to build up and train. So,
yeah,
be good and gentle with ourselves, I believe,
Yeah.
Take good care of ourselves. It's like, it's okay to have a treat, if you want a little ice cream, once in a while, it's like, well, make sure that you're up on, a balanced meal perhaps, or that you take a little walk to kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
Maybe not have ice cream for 3 meals a day, because that probably wouldn't be too healthy. So,
but this is, if you're looking to do a fitness goal of sorts around that, maybe it could be like, okay, I'm going to have an apple a day, keep the doctor away, kind of thing. So.
Exactly. That sounds wonderful. And, it'll be interesting looking at this astrology chart for the new moon that's on the 17th of this month, September 17th. The highest planet in the chart is Uranus, and it is also traveling backwards in Taurus. But just looking at the planets that is the most elevated in the chart, it's like there could be some changes, and very possibly, since it's in an earth sign, that changes that you do make positive changes will stick, or they'll make a big difference. So,
yeah,
I would encourage people, even if they're little differences, that, little steps are going to count big, it seems.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, it could be a career change or,
Any
you
change.
know, yeah, any type of change. Like, okay, I want to start studying this topic now or making this a focus. There's a lot of service stuff around here too. I mean, a service theme. Virgo is very self-serving as a planetary sign, and sixth house is of service, and Uranus is kind of ruled by the Aquarian humanitarian type. So that's another strong consideration of doing something that's of service for the world. That's
Exactly.
useful.
Or even within your community or your neighborhood, or even a neighbor. And then the sun and moon being at 25 degrees, numerology wise, that reduces down to a 7. So, some going within time, some time to spend with self, maybe a little bit of meditation or journaling, or like some gentle yoga, even if it's 5 minutes, to just take the time to go within, or take a time out, or go soak in a hot tub for yourself, away from your daily needs, or once a week. So there could be some time of just inner reflection happening with this new moon time. And don't forget to on the new moon, write down some desires that you would like. Light a candle, go outside and sit under the stars. I mean, you can do make up something, take a few minutes to yourself, just honor the new moon time. And again, the new moon is September 17th at 4 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Some of you won't be up at 4 in the morning, so you could do it the night before. You can do it the next day. I like to wait until after that event has happened. So, do it that evening instead of that morning. So it would be Thursday evening instead. But, you can be creative and make it work for you. So anyway.
Yeah.
And then the ascendant's at 22 degrees, and that's kind of jumping out at me. So 22 is a master number. So it's like kind of stepping up and being an example, or being responsible, being a teacher, be accountable to yourself even.
Yeah.
That's a big one, just being accountable to ourselves. That's great.
Yeah. I love how Venus is, she's about to move right now. She's about to move into Leo, which goes from a very sensitive sign to, family, tradition, safety, focus, to Leo, which is more creative and fun, and how do we make this fun kind of thing. And it lends a lot more confidence than what we've been experiencing. And a few days before that, actually like 5 days, I'm looking at the 12th, there's a beautiful Venus trine Chiron, which I think those are good for, those are good money aspects. So considering how you're investing for you, or how you're investing in you, would be something that's very
well, and it could just
ask, and
be some healing of how you deal with the beauty. It could be just like taking 5 minutes for yourself, or maybe don't stop at the coffee shop every day. Maybe take some of that money, maybe stop one day less a week and donate that to a cause, or somebody, a homeless person. It can be any number of things. Put it in the piggy bank. It's like, be creative with it, like you say. I love that.
Yeah. And there's also Leo, and can also be a theme around children. So how can we make education more fun and productive? and maybe shower some light and love, some really heartfelt love on those places and those things that we kind of missed from our childhood. How can we share that wound, or how can we help heal that wound for both ourselves and for someone else?
Exactly. So, this is wonderful, the times we're in, even though it can be very challenging. And, the Mars energy is probably kind of bringing some things up that, probably need to be addressed. It's like we could be a little crankier than normal, or we just don't want to deal with things, or, but it could also give us energy to do the things that we've maybe been putting off to do. So it can, there's always a polarity of how the energy works. So
Yeah.
That's a good thing, that it's not just one specific way. We have a balance of how it can work.
Absolutely.
So was that all the flower essences you had tonight? Because I know sometimes you have 3. Okay.
Yeah, I only have 3.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss any of those.
Thanks.
I do want to remind people that next week will be the Cosmic Collaboration on Saturday at 6 p.m. here on KKNW. And I believe Sue will be back on with them. And the topic will be Mars retrograde. So they'll talk a lot more about the planet Mars than we are talking about here tonight. And again, that your host, Sue Rose Minahan, is on the road doing some Mars energy. And we've been talking about the Virgo archetype, and we're working with the new moon on September 17th. Earlier this evening, we talked about the full moon on September 1st. So can you think of anything else to do for the new moon? Or looking at the chart, any other information that you want to share?
Well, there's, I did want to add with Mars, when Mars is retrograde, it can be, one way of interpreting Mars, or one word, is anger. So when it's moving retrograde, there could be some anger that's turned inward, and that's called depression. And Virgo can be very self-aware and self-critical. So I think it's really important to be kind to ourselves, be kind to others. You don't want to torch bridges that you may need to cross later. And with all this late degree planet activity, this, like you're describing as kind of these T-squares and grand crosses, there's a lot more intensity, more things that want to be finalized or resolved, I find. So.
Right. In the higher degrees, it's, we can deal with things if we choose to in a more mature way. Because when we have the lower degrees, like 0 to 5 degrees or even up to 10 degrees, sometimes it can be more that we don't want to deal with it on a mature level. We want to deal with it on a very childlike level of, maybe throwing a temper tantrum, maybe not, but, how would a 5-year-old deal with something versus somebody that's in their 20s deal with something, big difference sometimes.
I wouldn't say they're all, I wouldn't say it's immature, but I would say that sometimes how they approach things could be almost like a delayed response a bit, versus earlier degrees can have a much quicker response to things and get, be much earlier to rise or to get things done. Whereas later degrees can sometimes be pushing things out or even procrastinating, or seeming to procrastinate, but not really. But then just knocking it out towards the end, when approaching the due date or time, which can make some others jittery, or ourselves jittery in the process. So.
Well, and too, like with the Mars retrograde, if you've been trying to repress things or hold them in, it's like they might just bubble up without you, you can't hold it in anymore. It's coming up, but, as much as you can, try to let it come up in a constructive way.
Yes.
Because it's hard to take the words back or the foot out of your mouth after you've put the foot in your mouth at times, because there's diplomatic ways to say and do things and not so diplomatic ways to do and say things.
Yeah.
And, all year we've had the Capricorn cluster, so to speak, of energy happening. We have Pallas Athena there. We have Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn still in the Capricorn sector of the astrology chart. So there's redoing, Capricorn is businesses, it's government, it's, how we're seen. It's like kind of reworking those. It's like, how does that work?
Yeah.
What kind of changes do I desire to make? And, how do I make these? Sometimes Capricorn energy takes sometimes a while for the change to come about.
I think both of these can be very constructive. Like, how do we restructure this? So, this.
Exactly.
But this, takes dialogue and it's, it can be frustrating. There's no doubt, but these are two pretty constructive times, planets and times to do that.
Exactly. So don't forget to make your wishes and desires. And if you have time, light a candle on the new moon on September 17th. And if you know where 25 degrees Virgo falls in your astrological chart, you'll have a little bit more information of how that might work with you personally on a personal level. I always recommend up to 10 wishes or desires. If you can get it down to 3 to 5, that's great. But, 10's fine. So it's like, because that's a growing phase. It's like bringing things in. It's like, let's put things in motion. So you've been listening to Talk Cosmos here on KKNW. Next week, the show will be Cosmic Collaboration, talking about Mars retrograde. And again, Sue Rose Minahan is on the road, and she'll be back next week. And she wishes you all well. Do you have anything else you want to say, Sarah?
Well, the other thing I just mentioned is like Mars there can be themes that can play out. It's a good time to reevaluate with those retrogrades and especially this new moon of where you want to be 2.5 years from now. That could be just a really good question to kind of float out there. Because when Mars goes direct, that's kind of, you're able to get a lot more clarity as that retrograde and redirect kind of settles in. And especially with the new moon, this could be a very constructive time to plan that out, because you have all these earthly constructives, form and structure planets, all very supportive of that. So juicy new moon.
Yes, it's very good. It feels, like very appropriate, and with that Uranus being the top planet or the most elevated planet, that, as we make changes, we're little by little making those changes or knowing how to make those changes. Now, some of them are forced upon us and we have no control, because if you lose your job and you find another one, or, you get a relocated to a new area, oftentimes people will know ahead of time, but not always. So you just have to see, work with that and be as gentle as you can with yourself.
Yeah.
Don't forget to be compassionate to yourself. And, in these times, if there's something that you can share with your neighbor, share, with a friend, make a phone call, reach out. I think, some people are missing communication or getting together. Can you talk across the fence with your neighbor, perhaps? I don't know. Well, thank you for joining us here on Talk Cosmos this evening. We had the Moonbeam team, and next week, tune in for Cosmic Collaboration, and this show will replay on Thursday, September 10th at 6 a.m. Pacific time. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.